Basically, the meeting was held to discuss the protests that have been filed against the Conservation Commission's approval of DECAM's notice of intent to put down a temporary aqua block over the sediment in the river and to begin work on the river bank that ultimately would entail removing some of the contaminated material back from the river, putting in riprap, anchoring a membrane liner, and then putting clean fill in. And there was a protest by a 10-citizen group and a protest by the Charles River Watershed Association in conjunction with the trustees of reservations, basically saying that the plan as approved did not look out for the interests of the wetlands. So it affected the wildlife, affected the river, affected the quality, and DEP was holding a hearing to listen to what the protesters had to say, to give the Conservation Commission an opportunity to speak about why they had approved the notice of intent, and to give DECAM a chance to explain their position. The interesting thing I thought was that essentially we were able to determine that no work will begin this season. They've missed the low water period in the river, and essentially that takes away the need to do the aqua block, and so they'll have to start looking at a dredging activity, and none of the work will begin in the C&D area. And, what am I missing, John?
Let me take this.
Yeah.
What's quite obvious is that DECAM is rethinking its position, and that has been really made possible by the involvement of, I think, Congressman Lynch's office with the Army Corps and Charles River Watershed and the trustees of reservation, because of their ability to trigger public attention and press coverage. So the present situation is that Congressman Lynch's office is following up with the Army Corps, and I gather that the DECAM commissioner will be meeting with interested parties at DECAM's initiative, so that we have, as a town, a time of opportunity here to come up with some alternatives, some proposals to DECAM, and to get some support from aforementioned parties, Charles River trustees and the Congressman's office. So we can let these next 5 or 6 months slip by and do nothing, or we can try to inform DECAM as to what the town really wants and what it holds as imperative with regard to the future of the hospital, and we should seize the moment.
One of the things I thought that we need to get on record with is that DECAM had mentioned that Spectra refused to do any work within the easement in terms of removing the material, and as I think I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we actually got some feedback from some people at Spectra that they would be willing to talk to DECAM. So we presented that and talked about it a little bit at the meeting yesterday, Thursday. There essentially were a list of action items that came out of that meeting, things that DECAM would do, things that DEP was going to do. And Shirk, Andrea Stiller and Shirk are putting together a letter for your approval from the selectmen that says this is our understanding of what occurred at the meeting, this is what we understand the current status is, essentially that no work is being done now. Confirming with DEP that DECAM will in fact go back for a dredging permit now with the Corps of Engineers, and that they will meet with Spectra. So hopefully this will put a little pressure on DCAM to follow through with what they said they would do at the meeting. One of the things that we talked about was the current proposal for the work in the CD area gave us some alternatives, did not include all of the potential alternatives that could be looked at. For example, removing all of the material, removing some less quantity of the material, and doing bioengineering on the bank. And DCAM said that they needed more information about the bioengineering, and it's my understanding that Charles River is going to see if they can get them some information as to the firm that Charles River has worked with in the past, additional information. We still have the CSA Phase 2, Comprehensive Site Analysis Phase 2, and other Phase 3 alternatives to report on. Those are due the November 14th, 15th?
14th, I think it's 15th.
So I know that Shirk is working on those, and I know that Charles River is working on those. As part of that, we'll reassess and reemphasize our objections to the current plan down there, and hopefully by that time we'll have some more feedback from DCAM on what they intend to do down at the with Spectra in the area. I would hope that you would give the letter from Shirk your attention. It should be ready probably in about 3 or 4 days or 5 days. And it, again, as I said, it summarizes what we believe the current status is. It summarizes what we believe DEP is going to do, and it summarizes what we think DCAM has to do. So.
Now, does that mean the decision on the appeal will be held in abeyance, or do they have any idea what they will be doing?
Well, actually, I think if I had to venture an opinion as to what I think DEP Wetlands would like to see, they would very much like to see DCAM withdraw the notice of intent. One of the action items in the letter that's being put together for the selectmen to send out basically says that DCAM said that they would review that and advise as to whether they were going to withdraw it or not. Barring that, it seems to me that there's been enough attention brought to this, and again, as John said, thanks to the help from our local state senator and our reps and from Congressman Lynch, that they're very much paying attention to what happens down there. And I think that I just lost my train of thought.
You think they'll withdraw?
Yeah, so we do think that they're going to withdraw. I think they may need a little more convincing. They also need to withdraw their temporary permit to the Corps of Engineers. It supposedly is an 8-month process. They better get it started right away, or they won't make the next low water season for the dredging. So, that pretty much sums it up, I think.
Yeah, we need to know the cost of that gas line movement. If Spectra is going to move that gas line, it appears that Spectra wants to be the one in charge of the moving, not to have DCAM in charge of the moving. But Spectra clearly doesn't want to pick up the cost of the movement, although they might. We need to know the enormity of cost, though, before anybody can make a real good decision as to whether, I believe all the material should come out. I think we all know that, and I believe you people are signed on to the total removal. But whether that position is tightly held by Charles River, by Shirk, by others, is yet to be seen. But clearly, most of the material, if it goes up to the 200-foot line, most of the material would be taken out of there. And it would be left really up just proximate to the gas line. Am I correct on that, Bill?
Yeah, when you say move, I want to make a clarification. It's not clear what Spectra's position is on actually moving the line itself. I think we need to get a firm cost on what that would be, but what Spectra has said is that there are techniques to remove material from under and around the pipeline, and they're willing to look at that. The issue that came up, I think, with DCAM was that they're not willing to let anybody else do it other than Spectra, that nobody's going to touch the gas line except, Spectra's gas line except Spectra.
I would hope not.
No, well, yeah, and I guess it's not clear to me that when DCAM asked the question, like, what can we do about the gas line, what can we do about the material under the gas line, they didn't, phrase it in such a way as to say, why don't you give us a proposal for moving this? And what John said about the cost is true. If you looked at the phase 3 evaluations, feasibility alternatives that were presented to us, there's no dollars associated with any of them. And essentially, they do a ranking scale, and so you see this is ranked 14th, and this is ranked 15 in terms of assessed value, but there's no dollars put on that. Certainly, Spectra ought to be able to give us a cost for removing and say how much they're willing to remove and how far they're willing to go. And we need to just make sure that DCAM goes and has that sit down with Spectra and gets the pricing, then adds it to the pricing for their job.